the essential first step for those of you who feel directionless. It's totally okay to feel lost or feel directionless in life, and I've been there. It can be painful to not know what is next. So I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know your first step to get a direction and feel clear on this. I have the plan to show you one step, but the step has 5 kind of sub points to it. And it's very important you stay till the end, because the ending shows you why it's so important to make this first step. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Chris Richardson. I'm a coach here at Life on Your Terms, and I make these videos to share my experience, to hopefully pass on my knowledge so you don't have to go through the lesson with the scar. So you can hopefully understand your first step and understand your direction a lot quicker than I did. So with that being said, the first step to not feeling directionless is to define or stabilize your life. What this means is you have to understand and kind of take inventory of your life. And what I would do with this related to being directionless is to ask yourself, where do you feel directionless in your life? Because I'd imagine you don't feel directionless in all areas. For me, one area I've always really been able to lean on is my physical health. For the past 6 years, I've made it a huge priority to exercise regularly so I can kind of lean on that. I never really feel directionless in my physical health part of my life. But in my professional areas of my life, I felt directionless before. In my relationships, I felt directionless before. So it's important to understand that if you have one area you can kind of lean on, that can be very helpful. I have clients I work with where he really leans on his family relationships. He feels like he's a really good direction with that. In some of his other areas, not so much. Same thing with my other buddy. He leans on his spiritual health. That's an area that he has a clear direction on, and he can lean onto that to kind of find a direction in another area. So if you're wondering where you are feeling directionless at, I would look at the areas of your professional, your relationships, your health, and your resources. And if you want 3 subcategories for each of those to get even more specific, I would encourage you to take our balance wheel in the description below, because that really highlights all of those areas. I'd encourage you to take that at the end of the video. So the first piece is identify where. Where am I lost at? And that moves us to the second step within this first step of finding direction, and identify why. Why do you feel directionless? You have to understand that everything has led up to this moment of you feeling directionless. Whether it's past decisions, maybe it's current life events, maybe it's underlying beliefs or fears, or maybe it's a mismatch of values. So looking at some of those 4 things, maybe you can understand, okay, I made these poor decisions in my past, and now it's led me to feeling directionless because I'm not where I want to be. That could be a case. Maybe you had a child recently, and you feel like you're just directionless after that. You feel like you've kind of put in a lot of energy to raising your kid, which is amazing, but you want to know what's next for you. Or maybe your kids just moved out of your house. It's another huge piece. When people become empty nesters, they feel like they kind of lacked a direction. They don't understand what is next. Maybe you feel like you have this belief that you should be further along than you are, or you have this fear that you won't be successful. Those are all other reasons that you could feel directionless. Or maybe you're in a role in a company where you feel like there's a mismatch of values. Again, another client I was working with, she said that she just felt like at her last company, they didn't put the customer first, and that's what she wanted to do. So she felt directionless while she was there because there was that mismatch of values. So looking at those 4 different things can help you identify why you feel directionless. So it's key to identify where and why you feel directionless. Now, once you've identified these 2 things, you can start to look at the past and the present. And what I mean by this is you can look at, okay, in the past, I'd imagine you did feel like you had a direction, you did feel clarity on whatever you're feeling directionless currently with. So, for example, let's say in the past, you felt like you had a very strong direction, you were very clear on what job or what career you wanted to pursue. Fast forward 5 years, now you're not feeling that as much. What was different back then than today? That could be a powerful exercise to look back at a time where you were you had direction and you were clear, but now fast forward and you're like, I'm not so clear anymore. What changed? Identifying the delta between those two can be helpful for you to get direction once again within your life. Now, the fourth piece is, what emotions are you feeling related to this feeling of directionless? Are you feeling depressed related to it? Are you feeling anxious related to it? If you are, that's totally okay. But what I would ask you is, if you're feeling depressed, I'd imagine you're feeling a lack of perceived options. If you're feeling depressed and directionless, you're probably feeling like, I don't know what I can do, and I don't feel like there's that many options for me to do. Because depression is a lack of perceived options. I say perceived because you probably have more options than you think you do. If you're feeling anxious related to feeling directionless, you probably have too many perceived options. You feel like you could work on this or that or that, and you have so many things you just can't decide. So I'd ask you to reflect and look at the emotions you are feeling related to these feelings of directionlessness, and then understanding that if you have a lack of perceived options, it's going to be about creating more options. And if you have too many perceived options, it's going to be about trimming and cutting those options and narrowing. That can really be helpful to understanding how to get on a path and be clear with that path. So understanding the emotions, this is kind of the fourth subpoint of feeling and defining this issue of directionlessness. Now, the fifth and final piece, and arguably the most important to me, is that you have to decide to change. When you feel directionless, you have to make a mental commitment that you are going to put everything you have into finding that path and finding that next direction. And if you don't, things will probably suffer. I'd imagine that your relationships could suffer. Your daily routine will suffer because you don't know what to work on, or you're not sure what will keep you fulfilled and having a direction. And I'd also imagine that your overall well-being will suffer as well. So you have to ask yourself the question, what will it cost you if you don't commit to making this change? So often people live the same 6 months over and over and over for their whole life, and they're never fulfilled. They're never clear on their purpose or clear on what they want to do, and it's very sad to see. So you have to commit to making this change and ask yourself the question, what will it cost you if I don't make this change? If you're this far in the video, I'd imagine that you do want to make a change. And that's where I'd encourage you to take the balance wheel in the description below, because that can really highlight where you're kind of lacking in your life. And also, if you'd hit that like and subscribe button, it really helps the channel.